We would like to welcome all those who joined us through the social media and Zoom. This is the Zoom and the link. We welcome you in Qarib dialogue, and this is under the title of 2 years since October 7, and it is passing through the continuity of the war, but through a prominent event, which is the announcement of Trump on for a plan to end the war, and in brief, it is calling for Hamas to surrender and to give. Gaza for a committee to be managed by Tony Blair, the ex-Prime Minister of UK, and there are many other points that we are going to tackle during the discussion, and there are many trends linked to this plan. The war on Gaza continues, and head of the Israeli government is meeting with experts in order to evaluate this war, and what is on the ground is to continue with the plan of occupying Gaza utterly and to apply Israeli occupation on Gaza and to announce the defeat of Hamas. But before Trump's plan, there were many announcements recognizing the Palestinian state by EU states, and there is the investigation conducted by United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry conclude that Israel has committed genocide in Gaza. In parallel, the bombarding of the Israeli forces on Gaza and Lebanon and the northern part of the Litani River is continuing, and also targeting leaders of Hezbollah, as well as the building affiliated with Hezbollah. And there is also another front that isn't opened yet, but they are monitoring Iraq and monitoring the election results in Iraq, and it is the first elections after the decreasing influence of Iran, and also the harsh strike that Iran received, and killing its leaders and the political leadership. And I would like to welcome the participants. We have Ragad Salami from Jazeera Live, and she's journalist in Tulkarem. Fadi should have joined us, but Fadi from Gaza, Fadi Al Husni from Gaza, and he was displaced, and the place he was displaced to is facing some internet difficulties to connect. And Muhammad Abu Namus, the correspondent of Al Ghada TV in Gaza, and also Saman took, and also Hamad Abu Namus, and is from Gaza, and Joe Macroon from Lebanon. He's a Lebanese writer and political analyst. Saman Nouh, the editor-in-chief of Narij, Iraq, and it is a website that is focusing on investigative journalism, and have conducted many investigative journalism in Iraq and beyond. And we will dwell directly into the crux of the issue, because we are a few days away from receiving Hamas response, and we Muhammad, we are all the people are waiting for the decision of Hamas, and what is the opinion of the people in Gaza? Mustafa, yes, it is a good opportunity to meet good friends in such an important dialogue. The main concern of the people in Gaza is to stop the genocide, although they realize that the catastrophic circumstances and is very bad, and also they felt bad when Trump was declaring the plan, and also the John Denver and the special envoy of the president of the USA, and the last moment it was amended by Netanyahu and declared in its final form. So there is actually and also the Palestinians are waiting for the decision about this plan, and some people say it is an opportunity for Palestinians to stop the genocide, but others they are discontent with this plan, and they say it cannot achieve any Palestinian ambitions, and neither it mentions a Palestinian state, and what is and they are saying it is to dissolve the Palestinian cause, but the stance of Hamas is very difficult to accept. It is impossible, and to reject is impossible as well. So when you distinguish between Palestinian outside and inside, you can say that those who are outside Palestine are easy to say the, no for the Trump's plan, but those who are inside, they may say that we want it at any price. Yes, you are right, because the people of Gaza are living the genocide, and these are not announcements through the attacks on Gaza, even in 2014 and 2016, and in 2014 it lasted 50 days, and but there is 150,000 martyrs and 170,000 injured, and whole cities were demolished and erased from the surface of the land. I was displaced several times from Gaza, Deir al-Balah, and when I came back, I wished that my house is still there and not demolished. And this is a part of our suffering and ordeal, and now they are attacking the tents without any identification, and they are tents made of fabrics, and of course people of Gaza may say that we do not want the war anymore, and it is not a denial, but this plan indicates the surrendering of Hamas, and many of the people are not content with Hamas, but and this is the new and old discussion, but we need to benefit from the experience in order not to be away from track, and quickly said before moving on to the other participants, I asked you what is the opinion of the Gaza people, where they consulted before Hamas made this attack that you described as an adventure. It could be a very difficult question because of the people that lost their homes and lives and all the losses they suffered. True, and all through the Palestinian cause era, where the Palestinian Revolution used to decide on behalf of the people, and according to common principles, and then Hamas Hamas. Hamas is not the reason for the division, and also Fatah movement should shoulder the responsibility. But this dialogue and or controversy and this adventure, I mingle with the people and I keep hearing what they say. The 7th of October attack, most of the Palestinians were glad to hear about the attack, but after several hours they started thinking, what could Israel do for us? And now it is 2 years from the attack, and we have seen what Israel has done to people. Also, we are going to discuss this in details, but let us move on to Joe. What is your opinion? Even we in Lebanon are looking forward cautiously for what could happen in Gaza because it has its own reflections on Lebanon, or what, and vice versa. Of course, Lebanon and the region actually were during the past period and since the 7th of October, were living on the events happening in Gaza and the solution model, if there is any in Gaza, will have its own reflections on Lebanon because we are living the same dilemma, sort of saying, because it is affecting Lebanon and the relations, and also because of the management of Gaza, and uh, so let us talk about Lebanon. It is clear that there is controversy amongst Hamas people, and this is the last leverage they have. It is the captives, and if they are going to surrender them, and many regional factors are involved. Even there is a role for increasing role for Egypt and Qatar and other Gulf area, and also uh, this is unprecedented actually to have an interim president for a strip with a total area. Um, and you can see the international attention paid to Gaza, and this could be good or bad for the Gaza strip. And this is in brief as a background. As for Lebanon, there is stalemate, and to a large extent, we are not. We are still talking about Gaza, but the question that when the war ends in Gaza, the Israelis will be free to attack Lebanon. Is there any expectations because the turn will be on Hezbollah actually because they say that they are not going to surrender their arms. Um, yes, automatically, if the war ends in Lebanon, it will be reflected on Lebanon. Uh, Let us talk about the Israeli side. They are involved in several wars or battles at the same time, and if the if Netanyahu starts a new war, this is to worsen it will worsen the relations between Israel and USA, and there are many calculations or and if there is a USA control on them or not, and also Netanyahu internally, if he felt that he is besieged, actually, and can turn to Lebanon or Yemen, this is another story. But till the end of the year, most probably there is nothing big because. Uh, and before understanding what is happening in Gaza, things will not be clear actually. The Lebanon scene or landscape is waiting till they finalize the situation in Yemen and Gaza and there is a dialogue with Hezbollah and the government and the other parties. It is not automatically that if the war stops there, it will start in Lebanon. There are many factors involved. You started by saying that Hamas stance is difficult, but there is an option like surrendering and Hamas leaving Gaza as per the plan of Trump, and also the military siege. There are opinions saying that Hamas trying to gain some time in order to clarify some of the ambiguous terms as if they are going to moving forward for the military action. And those who are reviewing the plan are from outside, and the stance of such people because of pressures exerted by Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar, they say that they can accept some amendments. As for the military incursion, actually, or attack, it has several factors. Maybe besieging the city and how they can communicate, because the group that will agree on the agreement will not be actually turning in the hostages or um, and also the decision should be will be taken on the political level of Hamas and there are many questions involved. There is a lot of ambiguity involved for within this plan, and the ambiguity is very useful for Israel more than any other party and should be cleared. And of course, the priority to stop the war, to control Israel, to accept the amended terms or terms after amendment. Ragad, I think you have a comment. If you want to comment on what Mustafa has already mentioned between the people of the Palestinians outside and inside Palestine, because we have felt this that those who are outside are enthusiastic for not accepting the plan, because if Hamas turns in the or give away the captives or the prisoners of war, it will end actually. And what can we understand from this? Hello, everybody. You said well, but of course, everybody wants the war to stop, but sure enough, not according to these conditions. We are not with Hamas, but we are with all the Palestinians. True, there is Hamas and there are problems within Gaza, but we can see the situation in the West Bank. I live in Tul Karim. We don't have Hamas, but we are still living in very harsh and difficult conditions. The settlers are controlling the West Bank, and they are confiscating lands, they are establishing and building settlements, and also the continuous military operations. Of course, we have displacement, not as the people of Gaza. We cannot compare ourselves with them because it is catastrophic, and we are seeing and watching all the videos and pictures, and 2 days. I talked to you and I said also that my grandparents are living in Gaza and they are suffering from the displacement, poverty, and the lack of humanitarian assistance, and no goods are available, nothing can buy, and also no money is entering Gaza, and they have only limited budget as mentioned in a week. So we know that the situation is very difficult, but in general, Trump's plan is pure Israel Zionist plan and does not give Hamas movement any of the terms. They they don't want a Palestinian state, and also without Hamas, with the disarmament arming of Hamas, and cannot be accepted. As Mr. Joe mentioned, maybe they can accept it after some amendments, but there is no mentioning of the Palestinian state. There is something mentioned as for the self-determination, but not a Palestinian state. No, no, they don't want Hamas or others, even the Palestinian Authority. They don't want it to control Gaza because even in the West Bank, they are not allowing the Palestinian Authority to control the West Bank. So, they are not giving the Palestinian their rights in this plan. And the situation is very hard and difficult. And in my perspective and the perspective of Palestinians that I hear a lot of Palestinian analysts from the West Bank and beyond, that there was a change happened since the 7th of October. It's true that it could be a wrong movement, but it changed a lot for the Palestinians, and they actually spread the knowledge for the many European countries that they used not to know anything about what's happening in the West Bank or Gaza. And there was a plan for a war in Gaza in 2014, 2016, 2017, 2021, but there was no movement like what we are witnessing now. Um, for and For example, there is more than 60,000 martyrs in Gaza and destruction, and you can see the pictures. And sure enough, Mr. Mustafa can see what's happening on the ground and the level of destruction that will last for scores of years in order to restore Gaza as it used to be. In Gaza, the people of Gaza before the 7th of October were living in a small prison. They could do nothing. They were coexisting in Gaza, not living in Gaza. And they cannot leave or travel or do anything else. And also in the West Bank, we are living also in a prison. And after the 7th of October, we are living in a more strict prison. And because the occupation is confiscating more lands. And That's why we are keen to have someone from the West Bank because they have reflections to discuss the reflections on the West Bank and with the declaration of several EU countries and recognizing the state of Palestine. And you told us about the achievements of the 7th of October, but on the ground, is it a symbolic step as you are witnessing the expansion of settlements or we are seeing good movements from the Western countries, but to where you are saying that the settlements are expanding and like never before, and we are waiting. We don't know the Western interventions that could happen for the sake of Gaza or West Bank. I hope the recognition of the Palestinian state will not be on paper only, and it will be on the ground. What's happening in the West Bank on the ground? They are looting and confiscating the lands and annexing them in the north. They are controlling the north of the West West Bank, and they are displacing people, destroying their houses, and also the settlements that is being done in the middle and the western from Ramallah to Hebron to Jerusalem. Now there are three villages in western Jerusalem. Actually, they need permits in order to access their villages. They are expanding new settlement points, and they are letting the settlers to control the land and the territories, and they are providing new settlements for settlers and new roads, and they are calling on them to increase their numbers and to come to the West Bank. And sure enough, this will affect the West Bank during the coming period, especially in the middle and the north, and will isolate them and divide them. And with more than one gate and checkpoints, and on more than 200 were installed in 2 months' time, and we are suffering in order to access Ramallah from the West Bank or the middle area, and we need a permit in order to access the middle area of the West Bank and to move from the north and south. The pretext actually that there is Hamas in the West Bank, but there was only one group, and they are not affiliated totally to the Gaza Strip, and it was only a small group. Your internet connection is not stable. I don't know if you can fix it, but I wanted to move on to Saman. We are talking about the reflections of the 7th of October, and Saman, you are talking to us from Iraq. And there are very prominent reflections. The deterioration of the Iranis after being exposed to hard strikes, and also this might affect the Iranian arms like in Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and Iraq. So, what is your opinion, knowing that you are at the brink of elections, and we need to know what is the value added or what is the effect of such elections on different factions? Hello, everybody, and good evening. The reflections after 2 years of when what happened in Gaza and Syria, there is no Iranian influence anymore, and in Lebanon, it is well known what happened in Yemen. The Houthis were targeted, as well as the resistant factions. In Iraq, till now, we haven't witnessed anything. The resistance actually did not receive or experience any strikes. Uh, mm, uh, um, There are always threats that these factions are going to be targeted, and it used to be, now it is six factions after adding three other factions.
that they cannot
And
actually,
it is clear that
they
some
have welcomed these sanctions because of
parties
type
they
of
welcomed these sanctions,
legitimacy
and
that we are fighting two states,
as
and
they are resisting
that we are
two
fighting two
states
states that
after
threatens the security of the
what
region,
happened in Qatar, and
especially
targeting
after.
their allies, if we can say so. So. There's sort of
And
assurances and guarantees.
that the strikes are actually postponed, and there was a discussion actually 4 or 5 months ago that the strikes will be postponed, and the sanction or the factions were actually pressured not to do any operations against the US forces. Yes, this is exactly the question. uh, that Hezbollah actually implicit Lebanon in the support war, and it stopped before Gaza war stopped because despite the fact that Hezbollah's condition was actually that Israel would stop the war on Gaza before they stopped. However, Hezbollah went into the support a war, and the Iraqi factions, on the contrary, they haven't taken any step. And actually, uh, it wasn't actually there. It wasn't that they didn't enter because there was huge pressure from the Iraqi prime minister's government. And we know that the government are a consortium government actually that is compiled of many factions from the Sunni Shiites and other factions. So the Shiite is the most prominent. It's correct. However, it's not the only decision maker in Iraq and not the decisive one. There is an effect from the Kurdish and from the Sunni part of the government. And these parties actually were convinced that the entrance of or the involvement of the factions in this war will actually threaten the authority of these factions on the ground, and that the current government is composed of armed parties. Some of it have political arms, and others have armed arms. And uh, do you think that the Iranian influence in Iraq hasn't changed? So there was no impact as it is in the neighboring country, or as it happened in the neighboring countries. Yes, if they are not actually targeted military, they haven't lost any bases or actually any of the arms. So, however, everything is available and under control, and the potentials are there, and they are building their military capacities. A few years ago, they haven't had any AUVs or any drones, but now they do. And now the weapons are, at least the missiles are actually of longer distances. However, the government convention and the policy maker, the Shiite policy maker opinion, and we cannot ignore that there is too many views actually, even in the Shiite point of view, that there are other factions that refuse this stance, and see that actually Iraq in a neutral stance is really important for Iraq and for Iran as well. So there is no need for the Iraqi factions or for the Iraqi forces to enter this arena of combat, so that it's become an economic arm that helped the Iranian economy to breathe. So if Iraq enter into a direct conflict with Israel, then Iran would lose this economic arm that's very important. We know that the Iranian investments in Iraq are huge, and we know that even the factions are funding themselves in Iraq. So they don't need Iranian funding. They want the expertise from Iran. So there was a among the Shiites, there is a consensus that Iraq is not to be involved in that conflict, and that this serves Iraq and serves Iran one way or another. And there is an understanding from Iran to that issue. And also there were Iranian officials visited Iraq, who visit Iraq, and actually they didn't ask for anything. And any conflict or the involvement of these factions in these conflicts can be postponed, uh, but on the condition that the economic arm or cover would remain and provided to Iran. And even the other components of the Iraqi politics, whether the Sunnites or the Kurdish, they are agreeing on that. And there is a total agreement in Iraq that the war is that they would stay out of this war at least at this stage, and unless it actually exaggerated in the next stages. However, they are getting ready for the intensifying of the conflict in the upcoming period. But let's say that the Iraqi factions are stronger than the other factions, especially when we are talking about the Iranian-backed factions in other countries were actually badly targeted, and this is different from what is happening in Iraq, and that the factions are becoming stronger, and they even have drones. Yes, exactly. This is what is happening. Actually, that they are avoiding being targeted or struck. Actually, so their bases or their strongholds are not actually known, but now they are all actually known and exposed, and the leaders of the factions are moving very cautiously, even inside Iran, and they are benefiting from what has happened, from what happened in Iran and the killing of the Iranian leaders in Tehran directly. So they have benefited from that side, and they have benefited also from the compassion from the Iraqi or the sympathy of the Iraqi government, because there is a huge popular empathy, sympathy with the Palestinian cause, and especially under the atrocities and the massacres that's been undertaken. However, in Iraq, there is no party in the political space spectrum that supports actually involving in that war. So the advices is not to involve, and that these factions will be harmed and even excluded from the authority. They are now partners in the government, and they are participating in the government, even if they are only participating in 15 or 20% of the government. But this is only an insurance enough that they are able to enforce their policies or to cover their existence. However, these factions are satisfied with the current situation now, as long as they serve them and do not harm them. We will get back to you because we are going to talk about the elections. However, I don't want to take, I don't want to go one by one, but if I don't know, Mustafa or Ragad, if you have anything to comment, you can just step in without taking permission. I don't know, Mustafa or Joe or Rada, do you have any comment? I mean, what has been said actually by the colleagues, even from the speaker from the West Bank, falls in the repercussions of October 7, whether on Lebanon, on Iraq, and whether the Lebanese or Iraqis were tested or not. So maybe Lebanon was actually affected greater than anyone else from what is happening in Gaza. And Israel is still threatening, but I believe whether Israel is going to go back to Lebanon or not, this is not a question. Israel is in Lebanon, and aggressions are happening. But Mustafa Ragad said something that immediately after October 7, Gaza was besieged, and the Palestinians were actually under siege, and they were actually just facing death. So they haven't got anything to lose. So, from your opinion, from Gaza, and after 7 or 8 times of displacement, I know what is happening in the West Bank since I'm following things due to my jobs as a job as a writer and as a human rights activist and defender, and as a founder of a human rights organization. I know a lot about the West Bank, and since we are actually part of the same country, Gaza was under siege since 2006 until October 7, and before that, the if you want to go back to the history, that actually started in 1991. And Gaza Strip went through many developments, whether we are talking about Al Aqsa Intifada in 2001, and also the elections and the prominence of Hamas and the siege, and also the division. So one of the precautions of October 7. But if we want your opinion on that idea or your comments on that idea. So we have lost everything. So yes, 17 years of siege and the closures of crossings. So so Gaza has 7 crossings linking Gaza to Egypt, the West Bank, and historical Palestine. Now we have only areas, Beit Hanun crossing, and this one is only allowed for foreigners and for those who have special permits, whether the authorities employees or and some of the sick people actually, or those who actually. So let's go back to to October 7. We don't want to go back into history as much. Actually, no. The some changes happened immediately before October 7, but this case or this momentum that wasn't anticipated by the Palestinians and the Israeli response, as if the Israelis have responded, has discovered that the 1948 Nakba and the displacement of Palestinians actually and the diaspora, it starts again with a new Nakba. And what is happening actually in the white colonization in Australia by the new settlers, actually, the genocide was done directly. The minorities were eliminated. However, many of the Israeli intellectuals said that they haven't actually expelled all Palestinians from the occupied territories. So you are satisfied with the price you paid, actually, as a price of for this action. If we want to analyze the repercussions, no, the repercussions of this actually of this operation, no, the repercussions are very dangerous and very risky. Every minute is actually degrading to the Palestinian people. Nobody would feel that unless those who are actually being displaced, your authority, your property is actually your family. And I lost my son last year. Actually, my eldest son actually lost my son in this war last year, actually. So I'm not satisfied actually, even with that fascist and this and very difficult occupation, actually, and to go back to what our grandfathers were telling us, actually, to go back to camps, actually, of camps, of tents, and not even actually built up camps. So you can actually you need to stand actually in queues for water, for food, the poverty, the lack of funds, and this is these you are expecting bombing at any second, so you are waiting death every second. So who's going to be actually happy with this situation? And we hear that, and we hear some of the fighters and their wells. Actually, they said that nobody expected that this will happen from this Israeli aggression against Gaza. Joe, you had a comment actually before Mustafa said talk. But do you want to mention something? And I want to ask you about the idea of the price compared to what is being accomplished or what has been accomplished. Is it worthwhile? This is a very difficult question because actually there was an answer about the stance or the position of every country or every person, but we can do a general assessment actually. So or evaluation. Let me go back to the question. The question was uh, just before going to talk about the price. But the first thing I need to talk about is the repercussion of this October 7 operation. So we are in solidarity with Gaza, and we want to know on the general level, and not, of course, on the individual and the suffering of people. Actually, you cannot ignore the suffering of people, the daily suffering, but if you want to talk about strategic level, and it's not completed yet, the repercussions of that operation, October 7 operation, and maybe we need years to at least know how this operation translate. So the just to talk about the dominance, the Israeli dominance, actually in the whole Arab world, and not only in Gaza, there is a transformation actually in the position of some of the Arab states that were actually heading to normalization. Saudi before October 7 saying that they just want a recognition from Israel to a Palestinian state, and now we are seeing Saudi imposing conditions actually that if you are annexing the West Bank, actually we will withdraw from Abraham Accord. So now these things actually were not discussed. But so everything that happened before October 7, uh, you can notice that this at least is something really positive, and the recognition by some European countries in the state of Palestine. Do you think that this is a symbolic step or something that can actually develop in the future? Uh, I wrote something actually jokingly that it's written actually it's required from all Palestinians to take this recognition and go to the border, go tell Israel actually. So there is no control on security, on economy. Actually, we understand that the international community don't have any lobbying or any pressuring cards except for the recognition step. But however, this recognition is not translated on the ground. President Abbas can't take a visa to go out of the Palestinian territories. Gaza now is besieged. You need to go through a checkpoint if you want to leave. So I believe Palestinians can express the situation better than I would do. But so you think, in your opinion, this is symbolic? Yes, yes, definitely it's symbolic because when you hear Trump, it's like actually this recognition never happened. But yes, the countries that recognized Israel actually welcomed the Trump declaration. Yeah, this is the problem because Trump actually many of the Europeans actually they don't like what Trump said. However, they don't have any other choice actually. And having this unagreed on actually version and to declare peace before the approval of the parties concerned with that peace. And now there is an impression that peace is there, but there is no one to apply it or nobody to impose it. So there is a problem or a dilemma. There's no need to go back to previous tracks actually, but and the two states. But this roadmap of Trump, if implemented as is, it will never lead to a Palestinian state, actually. So, in this current condition, Netanyahu will not allow for a Palestinian state. We can have actually an embassy or something that, but as the foundation of a state is not there. Even the link between the West Bank and Gaza is not available, actually, or is not feasible. So there is a lot of questions now. So on the personal level and the suffering, I believe it's much worse than before October 7. Yes, situation was difficult, but now we cannot compare actually. So the daily repercussions and the daily impacts are huge, and I don't believe that the October 7 narrative has not been yet complete or finished. So I don't know if you have a comment or if you have anything to say. I just want to comment on the question that you asked to Mustafa whether he approves or not. Actually, we as Palestinians, whether in the West Bank or in Gaza, there is no room actually, or there's no actually choice for us to approve or not. So we have lived this without being asked or without being consulted, whether we agree on that or not. So we lived actually under or the state of de facto. However, what we have been living and what we are being going through actually, things are not actually getting better. Things are getting much more dangerous and much more actually difficult. And even if the war ended in Gaza and this peace roadmap is approved, actually things are getting much worse in the West Bank. All those soldiers killing people in Gaza will be moved actually to the West Bank so that the control they would have a grip on the West Bank, and we can find actually that there is an increase in settlement activities and building settlements, and also the settlers or increase in the settlers counts as well, who are living in the West Bank and taking the lands of the Palestinians. And what Joe mentioned whether the recognition is symbolic or not. And yes, it is symbolic. However, all the Arab countries welcomed this roadmap. Even Hamas actually, they said that they will actually talk to all Arab and Islamic countries will about this map. But the Arab and Islamic countries, they do have actually, or they do want the they do want actually to approve this roadmap to be in order to avoid any domestic disturbances, and also there is something really important that they don't know what is happening on the ground. They know the headlines only, and they say they saw some clips or some pictures or some news, but to talk about the reality, yes, I read a lot about Gaza, but I won't be living the conditions that Mustafa is living now. The humiliation, the torture, the displacement, and he lost his son. And I know how difficult this is. And thousands of families are experiencing the same experiences, and nobody will live actually and see exactly for themselves what is happening to the people in the refugee camps and on those in the displacement camps. And they are living in tents for months now, and they are living meters away away from their homes, and they cannot even get to their house because they are afraid of being shot or being arrested. So we are living in a huge prison as well. So nobody actually expected that we will get to that stage, but yes, but we did. And and now the media even are not shedding the light properly actually on what is happening in the West Bank. We do have displacement, we do have destruction in the north refugee camps. During this military operation, thousands of houses were actually demolished or even burnt by the occupation forces. So we don't know how much of that actually reached the international media. Only a report or live from one of the channels, live broadcast by one of the channels, and after that, this actually was done. And nobody actually was allowed to even broadcast on what is happening in the West Bank. Yes, the movement is actually, and the recognition is something really needed to be done. Yes, correctly. But do you know the situation, the correct situation, or the reality of the situation that we are living actually, and whether that this happened, operation meaning October 7 happened or not? Actually, we weren't living. So those who are participating on Facebook or on Zoom, they do have any questions, they are more than welcome to actually ask them. And our colleague from Iraq has a question on the platform to you, Salman. Do you believe that the Iraqi factions that are Iranian backed or affiliated will not be involved in the conflict, and they will remain on that position after the election? And Khulud is expecting that their win in the election mean that they will have the decision, they will be actually masters of the decision. But do you believe that they will commit actually to remain? Uh, I believe currently they don't want any escalation, and they are happy with the situation. They are currently enjoying some privileges, and they want these privileges to remain, and they don't want to be implicit in another side war that may threaten the privileges that they already have. As for the exact answer to your question about the Iranian position, whether Iranian will be targeted, and if Iranian is targeted, especially with a big attack, then they will move to a new phase and demanding these factions to move. In the previous attacks, Iran was thinking that these factions are supporting as supporting forces, and as Iraq state is there as actually an economic relief to the Iranian economy. But as I said, actually, these factions do not have the possibility to fight against Israel. They are very far from the borders. There are thousands of kilometers separating both parties, and there are a lot of hurdles that prevent the entrance of these factions. So, do you believe that this is self-restraint or this is actually a retreat? So whether they are doing self-restraint or they are actually retreating and de-escalating the high tension. In the previous stage, there was an understanding on the role actually of these factions in the current stage. They are exercising political pressure without actively engaging in the battle. However, the important thing of these factions is to actually preserve its privileges. Any engagement in a strong way will actually lead to the loss of its of their privileges. So maintaining this actually position will help Iran one way or another and will keep its place in the authority. The question here that it hasn't been complicit in supporting Gaza in any way. But if Iran is targeted, and there is a lot of talk that there is a strike coming to Iran, and a lot of analysis is going on on that topic. Maybe on the military side, and there will be an attack. So there will be moving north and not south. Everybody is waiting for the results of the elections, whether these factions will be actually will win or not, and this is likely, or it's a possibility actually to happen in the elections. The other party will benefit, the party with the most seats in the parliament, and the coalition or the alliance actually of the Prime Minister Mr. Sudani with other Shiite factions that are smaller factions. They don't have armed factions, and they do have the majority of decision making or the Shiite decision making in Iraq. So they will continue pressuring, and if they get any gains in the elections or in the upcoming elections, the role or the particular related to the influence of the Iraqi factions' influence on the decision making in Iraq will be even decreased more than before. So they will try to keep their seats in the parliament and to remain in the authority while trying to actually please Iran one way or another. However, if there is a big conflict between Israel and Iran, this will force the factions to intervene and to be part of that conflict, even if they are part of this part of the government, and even if the remaining of the government refuse their implicit or their engagement in that conflict, and they will get out of the Sunni or the Shiite or any decision whatsoever, because ideologically they are actually connected and they adhere to what is being recommended or ordered by the Khomeini or by the scholar in Iran. And all these issues need analysis before actually deciding or before knowing where these factions will go. Can I comment just a little bit, just to have? Uh, I believe that.
I think the military capability are still limited of Iran, and they were exposed to American strikes, and the Iranians asked for several things for the demarcation of the borders, for example, and others, and the American capability to move in Iran is big, actually, and we have seen what happened to Soleimani and others. And most recently, uh, not to target, for example, American bases in return of not to target them. I think we have seen this with the Ansar Houth uh, and uh, and uh, and even the capabilities of Hezbollah had changed, and which created different dynamics in Iraq, and it is different. Than what's happening in Lebanon or others. Yes, I do agree with this. They want to maintain their privileges in any way. The most importantly, to stay in the authority and to maintain their economic offices that are helping Iran in way or another. The second thing, the Shiites' decision in Iraq is different than the Shiite decision in Lebanon. Maybe there is Hezbollah and others, but in Iraq they are divided. Some have weapons, some don't, and also the Sadri movement is different, and it owns about third of the Shiites movement in Iraq. So there's a division between the different Shiite factions in Iraq, and also there are opposition in the authority and outside the authority, and they do not agree with them. So the Shiite decision making is different, and there is a concern to stay in control and in authority, because the Shiites governance in Iraq is very important. They need to maintain it. Then they can help the others, be it in Yemen or Lebanon or other parties. There is a question that I didn't understand the response fully, but there is a question posted on the chat that they are trading with the bloods of the people, among which is the Palestinian and the Kurdish and the Druze in Syria. And after, can you give us your opinion after Ragad has said that there is a feeling amongst the Palestinians that there is spontaneous shedding light um, and they are planning what's happening in Gaza. And in Gaza, as you know, the media is not allowed to go in. I do understand what you have said, Ragad, that what's happening in the West Bank is catastrophic, and even with Swetrich and they are confiscating lands, building settlements, leading the settlers, and the settlers' terror in the West Bank. And but there is a major difference between the Arab media or international media, that the situation in the West Bank is very dangerous, and the annexing is a result of what the Israeli government has been doing for the past decade. And then the slogan of Smotrich in 2025 is he has a plan to annex the whole of the West Bank, and he's moving according to this plan. On the Palestinian level, there may be criticism from Gaza to the West Bank that they are not um, supporting the Gaza, but the question is what you can do in order to support Gaza. But in response to the term trading, and there are accusations accusing the Muslim brothers in the world, and there are some satellite channels working on this, and in Europe there are others that are commending Hamas and the standing fast, and so Palestinians in Belgium or in France, so what they can do other than protest or have demonstrations, but there is a sort of exaggeration when people started saying that the war should stop because all the Palestinian people is realizing that this plan devised by Trump and Netanyahu is very dangerous for the Arab world and for Palestinians. Now, how we can stop the killing of Gaza? It is not required that Hamas to surrender their weapons or be disarmed or fight. Um and but on a political level, and for the New York summit and the international conference and going to General Assembly and recognizing the Palestinian states, Hamas was actually classified as a terrorist movement by some of the Arab countries. There were many voices that we cannot ignore that there should not be an individual decision making. The destiny of people is not linked to a party itself. And they started this war, and they have and Israel started the war of genocide. They should shoulder the responsibility. And Fatah, in precise, said that you haven't informed us since the beginning. So why we are going to decide for you and Hamas when you started this operation, be whether we agree or not, important or not, achieved some results or not. It could have achieved some results, but what is being experienced by the Palestinians? And Hamas should not play smart on other factions, and we need a unified Palestinian stance. Uh, um, although there was a question, but you did not respond to this question. Do you think that the announcement of some of the European countries and recognizing the establishment of a Palestinian state, is it an opportunity to build on and capitalize in the future? Or on the ground, it will not be an opportunity? I wrote it twice. It is symbolic. It is symbolic. But on the ground, those European countries, with their belated recognition of Palestinian state, is something regional, without a policy, without borders, without identifying any region where the Palestinian state should be established. Europe did not take real measures in order to force Israel, and in order, if they were are capable to announce the recognition of a Palestinian state, there should be steps taken on the ground, and they have been long supporting the Israeli state. Only 3 to 4 months, especially the deep countries, actually like Britain, France, and others, they had a very bad position, and they did not classify it as genocide, but as a war. And but is this going to result in real measures and actions against Israel by Europe if they are not enabling Palestinians to achieve a Palestinian state on the ground or not? The It is getting the momentum because it is announced by European countries, and this could be a leeway in order to finish the isolation of Israel. It could be a tactical measure, albeit I consider it as an important step. The Palestinians in their struggle, legal struggle and democratic struggle, they are seeking to have a state. And in the last moment, actually, I will be moving in 10, and I will start with you, Joe, because we started with Lebanon. We can end with Lebanon. And a while ago, you mentioned that one of the things that was achieved after the 7th of October, that there are military achievements on the ground. They attacked Iranian factions. They weakened them. They expanded in the West Bank and Gaza. Is it moving forward, or the Iranian attempts, what is called Sumud, is getting to get its role? Unmute yourself, please. Okay. I started talking to myself actually while I was muted. It will increase um, if at the last period of Biden, they were not controlling the pace. But if the pace persists, actually, there will be an increasing trend. And there is an attempt to accommodate these and absorb these strikes and there's a secret. There's a pressure for Lebanon not accepting to surrender their arms, and there are no more options available, and Lebanon is hovering between the daily bombardment of Israel and surrendering their arms. And I don't know if there will be a military solution or not. Things are not clear. True, Israel made a very strong strike against the Iranian affiliated groups, but they did not terminate them fully. Like Hezbollah, they actually attacked the control and command system within the party, but we all know the capabilities of the Hezbollah, and sure enough, they lost their capability to import weapons, and there are many points that are not clear yet. But sure enough, Hezbollah is now is much weaker than before 7th of October. But we don't know what will happen. We are still in the heart of this conflict, and the picture is not clear yet. I would like to ask Saman something that you posed about the media, because Saman, you work in the Nereid platform and you are independent media. So, what say you with the role of the independent media that became prominent during the past 2 years on what's happening in Gaza and the region as a whole? The problem of the media and the experience of Ukraine and now Gaza posed many questions about the neutrality of the media and journalism, and if journalism can take a position. Actually, I think most of the media institutions they failed in the Ukrainian experience, and it became clearer when they covered the events happening in Gaza. Big questions arose about the credibility of the media and how much or to what extent they can maintain the neutrality and balance of the media. And they were not abiding by such things before the Ukrainian war, and the media was divided with Russia and with the Ukrainians. And let us stay on track. Like Gaza, things became more clear or clearer in Gaza, like the Western media, as the role of your good selves. Uh, um, in the Arab region because you played a major role in covering the Israeli crimes perpetrated. It was there was no real or good coverage for the genocide and the crimes committed by Israel. And in the first 6 months of this year, the media changed and became clear about taking a position. And there was decision that media should have a stance and stop being neutral against the genocide taking place on the ground and the attacks even against Iran. They sympathized actually with the and were against the strikes against Iran, even in the Western media. Now the media discourse is getting changed and affecting the region, but the impact of this influence or change on the people and the governments, and we fear to have right-wing governments like in the Europe and. It is actually retracting, and this will be affecting on the aspired hopes, not only in the West, but also there is restriction on the media in the Arab world, not only in the West and Lebanon or others, and through finding gaps in some laws, but Qarib, actually, and we'll have other dialogues when it comes to media, and we start with you, Ragad, and we need to finish with you. I wanted to say to Mr. Mustafa, who asked about the position of the West Bank and why we cannot say anything about what's happening in Gaza or cannot play an appropriate role. No, no, he hasn't said so. Maybe you misunderstood. He was evaluating or assessing your parlance and blinding the what's happening in the West Bank and why it is not covered properly. No, no, I think he has something about this. Please, you may utter your opinion. Unfortunately, in the West Bank, we are being held accountable even for our breath. And at the beginning of the war on Gaza, the West Bank was full of protests against the war on Gaza. And we were able to voice our sound and to support the people of Gaza and stand fast with them. But after these protests, the occupation started arresting young people, young men and women, be it affiliated with the resistance or only on the pretext of supporting the people of Gaza. And even the Palestinian Authority started asking the young people to interrogate them, and there were many arrests. And and many arrests took place either in the prisons of occupation or prisons of the Palestinian Authority since the beginning of the 7th of October. And we mentioned another thing at the beginning of the meeting that the West Bank is prohibited to send anything to the people of Gaza. And as we said, that the monetary fund a Palestinian military fund. Actually, we were talking about this. Nearly $140 is allowed to be sent to Gaza in a month. But we, as normal citizens, were prevented from sending anything or any money to Gaza. For example, if you go to the bank and say that I have the account number of this person. They will send us to the monetary fund, Palestinian monetary fund, and the interrogation will start. For example, a friend of ours, they stopped her account because she sent 500 shekels. So the government is controlling sending money to Gaza in full. They consider that these remittances will be for Hamas. They use usually this pretext, as Mr. Mustafa said, and they but also, if they ask for our full names, they would have known that we are sisters, but they use this security pretext. Also, piracy. At the beginning of the military operation, we have seen the humanitarian assistance sent by the West Bank, food, medicine, and even donations. But have they reached Gaza? No, they didn't. They were taken by the occupation and other, and even the Palestinian cities in the 1948, Nazareth and others. They sent actually donations, but they used to loot them all. Do you have anything else? Because we need to conclude. They used it to allow. They used to allow journalists or humanitarian efforts to enter Gaza, but in this war they did not allow them to enter. Yes, it is true. International organizations are asking Israel to allow journalists to let them into Gaza, but till now they are prohibiting this. Thank you, Ragad. Thank you, Saman, Joe, Mustafa from Gaza, and I hope to see you soon in other webinars organized by Qarib. Thanks for those who participated and were engaged and posed the questions, and see you soon.